All right, joining us today on Pirate Radio Live, Dr. Gary Overton, Coach O, to talk some Pirate baseball. Coach O, a lot of Coach O this week. Had you on the Brian Bailey Show, but great to have you back here with us on Pirate Radio Live. How you doing, sir?
Oh, really well, and thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. And Pirates coming off a loss last night against Campbell, which unfortunately is not new news. The Camels have had the Pirates number over the last few years, Coach O.
Well, they've had some really good clubs. There's no question about that. And I mean, you look back just what was it, 3, 4 years ago? They played in a super regional down at Mississippi State. So it's been a good program, and it was built well by Justin Hare
Yep.
by putting together junior college players actually before the portal even began. And he did so with transfers and did it well at a very fine institution.
I know they were glad to be home, right? Coming off a trip to California where they lost to Santa Barbara. So you kind of get back home feeling good about yourself, and they were able to knock off the Pirates last night. Going into that game, I talked to Mike Mullis yesterday and others about East Carolina midweek should be pretty strong this year, just the way the pitching is set up for the Pirates. Question is, can they hit enough? They didn't do it last night, but man, you got to feel good about where this team is 4 games in, pitching wise, right?
Oh, very much so. I mean, to have a staff of that strength this early in the season and a number of players, the quantity of players that have stellar bullpen last night as well, but that has produced and produced well, but showing really strong arm strength and gaining arm strength, it seems, by the game or gaining development per game. High number of strikeouts once again. Pitchers striking out 12 hitters last night, and that primarily from the bullpen. So 3 guys really producing.
You look at what Pruitt's done and Williams, who's kind of stood out to you so far early from on the pitching side.
Well, let's go back to the initial weekend, and I think you have to look at both Ethan Norby and Sean Jenkins. Now, Sean Jenkins, 1 hit over 5 innings, and what a way to start your college career. Ethan Norby, we all knew how good he was, but velocity up a couple of notches. So he's certainly a strength. But when you mentioned Pruitt, those guys and Young coming out of the bullpen, Lance Williams last night, one time touched 97. So and it seemed like Pirate pitchers were on 93, 94 all evening. The entire bullpen really has produced and done so well. Ian Smith with 1 save, but also completed a game that the Pirates won as well. So he's had 2 outings. But yeah, a number of pitchers and a quantity of pitchers.
You mentioned Jenkins, and he's a freshman and a young freshman at that. And I guess there was a time when I think about basketball, I think freshmen couldn't play college basketball. And then famously you hear about Dean Smith and how he would kind of the only guy that could stop Michael Jordan was Dean Smith, is the old saying. But Coach O, back to your coaching days, did you handle freshmen generally, or everybody's different, right? So did you have to handle, hey, this guy's ready for it, where this guy might not be? How do you kind of handle a freshman and one as good and as young as Sean Jenkins?
Yeah, and that's a great point. But the term we used to use is picking your spots. And for that particular player, especially with the development, more times than not, you'll begin freshmen in let's not call them easier roles, but roles that are not as arduous as what you would a veteran player.
Right.
And yet Jenkins, with his maturity, we've heard that quite a bit. We've heard from Coach Godwin many times about how mature he is, the work ethic that he has acquired. All of those things very important. And another thing too, he really has the perfect pitcher's body. That's what pro ball is actually looking for: a strong upper body and maybe a little bit larger than say a pure specimen athlete, and then very strong legs, and that for the thrust in a fastball, as we would know, and also for duration of a game. But he possesses all of that, and so his qualities are exact to be a number one guy. And I think the ECU staff can treat him a little different, a little more like a veteran than, say, a freshman.
Jared was out at the field getting post-game interviews and talked to Sean Jenkins the other day, and I don't know if he's media trained or just a natural, but as you said, mature, kind of wise beyond his years, and saying all the right things. And it's a coach's policy, and I go back to football here, but going back to Skip Holtz and Ruffin McNeil and Mike Houston, they wouldn't let you talk to freshmen. Maybe 8, 9 games into the season or whatever. But it shows you the trust that Cliff Godwin and the belief he already has in this guy, that heck, he'll throw him out there for a start on a weekend and then have him talk to the media. And he is mature beyond his years. That's Sean Jenkins, I can tell you.
Well, and you mentioned the word trust. I think that's a big part of how soon you can get a freshman into a lineup or into a starting role, especially if he's a pitcher. But having that trust and developing that trust both ways, not just from the coach to the player, but the player to the coach as well, allows for that. And then again, you factor in the maturity level that you're referring to. And some players just have an extreme knowledge of the game. And it appears that Sean's knowledge of pitching is very keen, and I think that has to be attributed to his youth league coaches and primarily his high school coach coming in and now getting around Austin Knight. That only makes things better for him.
Dr. Gary Overton joining us today on Pirate Radio Live. Well, Coach, 4 games in. There's folks already hitting the panic button, so we're going to have you tell everybody not to worry. But what have you seen from the offense so far, and what needs to change moving forward to get some productive at bats?
Well, the changes certainly will occur if there are any changes from Henry Lartigue and Bryant Packard, the 2 hitting coaches, and both of those guys certainly command the most respect as hitting guys, but. A lot of swings and misses right now, and I think you'll probably see a little bit of I wouldn't call it a change by any means whatsoever, but maybe a little movement in tactics and philosophy of finding the barrel. Which is what we all aspire to do on every swing of the bat. But that could be a possibility there. I don't think you're going to see any major adjustments whatsoever. I think it's just going to take some time for development. But I put a lot of trust into those 2 hitting coaches for the offense to be developed. Now, in time and as the weather warms up, hitting's going to catch up to the arms. And the more you see, mid-90s, even in some cases, like we talked about Lance Williams, upper 90s, the more you see that, the more it looks the same. And barrels will be found. There's no question about that. But as far as the tactics and the strategies or philosophy of what those coaches will do, it's just going to take a little time. Let's remember, a lot of these guys have not been out there but so much. And some of those, it may be in junior colleges, where you see a lot of fastballs,
right,
and not really spotted breaking balls, so to speak. Little different game there.
Well, we did see a little wrinkle in Game 2 of this Pirate season. Cliff Godwin moved to the dugout. Bryant Packard goes to first. Jeff Palumbo to third. What did you make of that move, Coach? He said post-game, with this team, I need to be in the dugout. So what does he mean by that?
I think that speaks volumes for what he's trying to do. He's coaching in the dugout between innings. He's talking about that, and he's probably building a lot of confidence as he goes. But, again, we go back to that trust between coach and player and coach, and he's getting a lot of that in the dugout, I'm sure. There's 2 schools of thought on coaching third base. Some feel that the head coach feels that he needs to be in the dugout to run the game, to see the entire game and not just the offense. And then there are others who like to command the offense themselves. But yeah, I think he's not only doing that just for those players that he can reach in the dugout, but I think he's seeing the entire game in probably a little different light. When you had guys with all the experience like Jenkins, Cowart, Cunningham, we go on and on, Starley, all of those guys. When you had guys like that, eventually a barrel was going to be found.
No doubt.
And we're not talking about necessarily a home run, but maybe a bases-loaded extra base hit or something like that, and that can change the complexion of the game. You don't need to see the whole game when that occurs. But when there needs to be a little more guidance, I think twofold for his move to the dugout.
Did you coach third during your career?
As the assistant coach for 7 years, I coached third base. And as the head coach, I moved to the dugout. Again, for my purposes, was to see the entire game. I didn't feel that, again, I'm not sure that I had a club with so much youth that needed me around them. But I just think that the head coach, defense, base running, we can go on and on about all facets of the game.
Yeah. Dr. Gary Overton joining us. Coach O, you mentioned Pack and the way he could hit in the lineup at East Carolina. And not to compare guys, but Dixon Williams is a Conley guy. He's the middle of the order guy. He's swinging from that left side. You know, how good can Dixon be as a ball player? Because he looks right now to be one of the leaders on this team, and got out to a hot start over the weekend with a couple of home runs.
Yeah, and he is a leader on the team. How good can he be? He could be as good as Bryant Packard. Two players that swing the bat very much in the same way. Now, another factor is how much of the load is he trying to carry?
Right.
And he began the season at a different position, second base versus. I mean, so there are many factors as to how hot that start could be, but will be. And but you asked the question, how good could he be? He could be as good as Bryant, and Bryant was very good. He was an outstanding college player.
The way he'd hit to the opposite field was a thing of beauty. And
with power.
With some pop, too. You talk about finding barrels. That ball would find his barrel quite a bit, Coach. Talking to Gary Overton today, with this, Cliff has shown, and he does not mind changing a lineup around, changing guys around. So do you think we see any new faces, or do you think the guys we've seen right now in the field and in the batting order are the guys we're going to see moving forward?
Well, I think primarily what we've seen to this point, but there are other options, and there are guys on the bench that have had, as you said, none or limited playing time to this point. So you will see them get roles. That's another trait of Cliff, is that he likes to get multiple players in games, be it as a base runner late in the game or a defensive replacement or whatever, because it makes them feel more of a part of the game while gaining experience. So I think you'll see him in those kind of roles. But many of the offensive players to this point are pretty much the ones that I think he will use as the core, especially guys like Wallace and Dixon Williams and people like that.
Coach O, I always like to kind of pick your brain about the state of baseball. And I had Ethan Norby on a few weeks ago. He's a big Minnesota sports fan, so he likes his Vikings and his Timberwolves, but also his Twins, although he said he doesn't enjoy watching the pro game as much as the college game. He'd rather obviously play, and if he's going to pick a game, maybe pick a college game to watch rather than a Twins game, just because of the strikeout or home run style that MLB is now. So as a baseball lifer like yourself, when you watch a Major League Baseball game, do you enjoy it? Do you wish it was different and maybe the way it was? Or, how do you feel about it right now?
Well, I'm a proponent offensively of power. I like that. I like to see that. I think anyone likes to see extra base hits and certainly the long ball, but that's not what drives the game. The tactics, the strategy. We're not going to call it small ball or manufacturing runs, but instead all elements of the game. You see less and less, and I think this is what Ethan was talking about. You see less and less hit and run, or let's call it team offense. Hit and run, straight steals. A lot of times players with green lights can go, obviously, but at the same time, you see the element of strategies by way of team offense becoming a lesser factor in the game. And that, I'm like Ethan, I would like to see more of it. But I wouldn't like to see less of the excitement, you might say, that power produces. And I think that's a big part of the game, particularly for fan interest.
Yeah, and looking forward to, I guess, spring training. There's a game tomorrow, I believe. Dodgers and Cubs, maybe. I think they get going tomorrow. So they'll get rolling. Have you ever – so you were either coaching or – involved with East Carolina in some way, shape, or fashion. Have you ever been able to go to spring training, Coach O?
So interesting you say that. I mean, we all have been to many Major League games, over our span of being a fan, but not spring training.
Man.
No, you're exactly right. Because of college baseball and when it's played, never had the opportunity. And you're so right.
Well, I could see you. You got to get there when you're. Hey, take a series off, Coach O, and get down there. I know you'd love that.
Well, all the stories that I hear, and I hear most of them from former pro players, and they talk about what actually transpires during spring training, and of course the games that are played, and what occurs on a daily basis.
We've seen Pirates sprinkled throughout, pro baseball forever, but has it ever been like it is right now with Burley and Gavin Williams and Norby and of course Clayton McCullough managing the Marlins? Is this the biggest Pirate presence at one time you think we've seen in Major League Baseball?
I don't think there's any question about it.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I think a lot of that's a credit to Cliff and the development that he's had over those players while they were in college. But yes, the presence of the Major League presence from ECU is at its highest peak.
That's awesome. It's got to be great for recruiting and everything else. Left out Jeff Hoffman, who was awesome for the Phillies, especially against my Braves, but now with the Blue Jays, I believe.
That's correct.
And looking forward to the next group of Pirates to go from minor league baseball to the major. So it's been fun to watch these guys grow. All right, Coach O, got North Carolina coming up this weekend, and talking to some baseball people each week, when the schedule came out and as we got closer to the season, they are saying that this could be a tough weekend just because of the Tar Heel arms. And is this about the best pitching you think ECU will see this year, some of it anyway?
I was asked the other day, who's the best club on the schedule? And the answer at that time was probably North Carolina, but you never know. I mean, by the end of the season, all kinds of factors can occur that changes things. They do have two really good or really quality starting pitchers, and their bullpen is good as well as ECU's. But the depth. And the quantity of players, the quantity of pitchers that we discussed earlier.
Yeah,
I think the Pirates might actually have a little more depth, but now they have a very good pitching staff. There's no question that two of their guys, Jason DeCaro and Folger Boaz, both one right, one left, really good. But position player wise, Vance Honeycutt's gone, and he was a premier player. And I'm not sure that you would call anyone other than the catcher a marquee player on their club. So, can the Pirates win this series? Absolutely. Absolutely.
And you know how this goes. We say, all right, going to be some quick, low-scoring games, and then we'll have a 15-12 game out of nowhere, right? That's kind of how it works.
Works that way. About 3 home runs in the last inning and a half.
Yes, exactly. All right, Coach O, we'll wrap it up. What you think of Jaden Daniels?
Very, very impressed.
Got us excited again, right?
Very much so. I mean, for you and I to watch Sunday afternoon football now, he gives us something to look forward to.
That hadn't been the case in a while. But, man, that playoff run, that was fun. And I was telling you Monday that even when they lost to the Eagles, I was kind of able to hold my head high and say, man, that was a fun run there.
Yeah, it really was. And the NFL has made some strides to make things like that happen, too. I mean, we all know about how they try to create parity.
Yeah.
But teams that come out of nowhere like Washington this past year, but, I mean, the Eagles winning and dominating the Super Bowl as they did, like them or hate them, they were the best team.
Like you said, we lost to the best, I think, right?
Exactly.
It feels that way anyway. All right, Coach O, always enjoy talking with you. We'll check you out on the radio side of things, of course, as you are there. But we'll keep in touch and talk more baseball with you down the road.
Absolutely, Clip. Thanks much.